This is Ask Joe number. What is up? Welcome to the podcast. My name is Joe Gilder, and I like you a lot. I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to... Why am I hearing more than I should be hearing? Hang on. There we go. I messed up the settings on something. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. If you are listening on to the recording or watching the video, hi. If you're here live, hi, folks here live on the stream. Glad you're here. So today I want to talk about something that it's a little uncomfortable, but I think it'll be good. So the topic today is blind spots. Okay? Blind spots. Blind spots, blind spots, blind spots. So what is a blind spot? Seems like a fairly obvious question, but a blind spot is something that you can't see. Okay, I know I'm just jumping right in, but I was thinking about this. I'm doing a promotion right now that you'll find out about tomorrow, but I'll probably tell you about it here in a minute for those of you here live. But there's this idea that we all have things about ourselves we can't see very well. We've all seen the episode of American Idol where the singer sings horribly, and it's so terribly obvious that this person is not a good singer, and they finish and the first judge says, "Wow," or something like that. That was incredible. And they go, "Thank you so much, thank you." And then they say, no, I'm saying, "Wow, that was awful. How did you get this far?" And so there's an element of, first of all, how can that person not realize? How can that person listen to professional musicians day in and day out and not realize that they are not one of them? But more than that, how can they have friends and family who encourage them, who have to know, at least on some level, that this person's just not very good, and yet they allow them to go in front of national television and be embarrassed because they had no business being there. Now, I get that that's good television, and those video clips get shared more than the clips of the really great singers that come on that show. But the point still remains, there's a common thread among people in general of really not having good self-awareness, not really knowing what we're good at and also what we're bad at. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else, although the last several years I feel like I've made a lot of progress in knowing who I am, and also, as just as valuable, who I'm not, and trying to live in that more. The thing is, a lot of times if you do some digging and you look at yourself closely, you're going to find out, who I am isn't who I would really like to be. Or who I am is not who I think I should be. Or I wish I was this, but I'm really that. And I don't want to be that, so I'm going to either just work my butt off to be this thing that I'll never be, or I just live this life of anxiety and depression because I'm not who I think I'm supposed to be. So there's a lot of tangents we can go on. This is a topic that is a lifelong process of discovery, and certainly not something I can cover or do even adequate or even a slight bit of justice here on the podcast. But I'm going to try. I'm going to dive in and give you a couple things. So the main topic is blind spots. So people say, "Oh, I've got a blind spot there." First of all, if you're not familiar with the phrase blind spot, it's this idea that when you're driving a car, there's places that you can't see. If there's a car back here behind you, and you look over, you can look over and you don't see him in the windows or the mirrors. You also can't see him when you turn your head. You've got to jerk your head all the way around. It's good to know what your blind spots are so that you can make sure you don't have a car crash. But also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think human vision, I think we have a blind spot over here somewhere in our periphery where like my finger disappears at some point at one spot. Anyway, who cares about that? But when it comes to personal blind spots, there are these places like the singer on American Idol. They are just blind to the fact that they're not a good singer. And the thing about blind spots is you can't see them. You just can't uncover them on your own because you're blind to it entirely. Now, can those blind spots be fostered? Yeah. Can you develop a blind spot because you were actively ignoring the truth? Sure. But I think one of the biggest cures that I know of for a blind spot is feedback from somebody else, or this idea of getting criticism from someone else, or even asking for someone to say, hey, what are my blind spots here? At my church here in Nashville, we had my pastor, which were predominantly white Caucasian church, and we had an African-American pastor come in, or I guess he wasn't a pastor, but a member of the community who's friends with our pastor, to do just a discussion on racial tensions and racial reconciliation and kind of ways that we as a church and a people can engage that better. And one of the great questions, and I feel bad for the guy who was visiting because I don't think he was prepped for this, but my pastor said, hey, as you've gotten to know me, what are my blind spots? And when he asked that, I was shocked because it's such a courageous question, and a question that most people are unwilling to ask because they're unwilling to actually hear the answer. Now, he didn't get a good answer in the discussion. He just kind of bounced around and kind of made some generic statements. But what would it look like for you to ask someone, what are my blind spots? What are areas of my life where you see some big problems or room for improvement or things like that? To hone in to make it a little more relevant, what are areas musically that I'm blind to? Even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking of things that I could do. For one thing that I've been thinking about doing for a long time is emailing people that I play music with in my band or people at church and saying, hey, what are ways that I'm hindering you? Or what are my blind spots when, I really want to email this one drummer friend. He plays at our church a couple times a month. And I have a sneaky suspicion he's got a good insight into my playing as far as timing. I'm not great. When I'm just playing guitar, I feel like my timing is pretty good. I can stay with the click, stay with the beat. But when I'm singing, I tend to rush things, especially when I'm singing something that's high or difficult or out of my range a little bit. And I would love to know, because I've played in bands or with people where they're really bad at timing, and I can notice that, and I'm curious, do I do that too? And I honestly don't know the answer. And I think I've improved a lot because I've done some intentional practice around that, but I'd love to get his feedback. I'd love to email my band and say, hey, what are some of my blind spots? And I bet my brother-in-law Joel Bazaire is really good at pointing out some of them gently, but he just sent me a text today, said, hey, the band's pretty good, but we still need a lot of practice. When are we rehearsing again next? That's kind of pointing out a blind spot that I've not thought about that. We booked the shows, we played a couple shows, and we're kind of in a lull between shows, and I'm covered up and kind of overwhelmed and with just stuff, all the busyness of life, and I need to get back and do that. So I don't know if I have any answers here. I have mostly questions, and I'm pointing the finger at myself as much as I am at you. But this all came about when thinking about things like mix critiques. And I've started doing these more and more for clients where they send me their mixes, I pull them up, I listen to them, and I record the whole thing. So I listen to it, I hit pause, and I talk and record that and just kind of keep going. And I go through their song and give them a critique of anything I hear that needs to be improved. And a lot of the discussion is around the mix itself, but then there's a lot of discussion around the songwriting itself, the performance, the recording, the arrangement, the production. All these things factor in to making it a good mix. And so I'm not just going to say, hey, that vocal is too bright. I'm going to say, hey, that vocal it's just not a good vocal. It's not a good performance. It's flat. It's out of tune. There needs to be some improvement there. And a lot of times people, they're thinking so much about the mix, they haven't thought about all the other ways, the other things that are contributing to what they think is a bad mix. So these critiques that I do, I started as doing them for my VIP members, where I do them for free for members during a window every month. And I've started offering it to people who just want to, purchase a one-off mix critique. And excuse me, it's been a really fun process because I've gotten to hear a lot of cool music, but also people get real feedback that sometimes is really uncomfortable, but if they actually internalize it and listen to it and decide, A, if they agree with it, and then if they do, go and do something about it, they always have improvement. It's a really powerful thing to see and to watch and to experience. And it's kind of along these lines of blind spots. In what ways am I too close to this and I can't see it clearly anymore? Inviting other people into that is a great way to shake things loose and to figure out what you might be missing or what you might not be hearing and things like that. So today is Tuesday, the 20th of September. So I'm doing a promotion through the 25th. So through this weekend, Sunday, if you buy one of my products over at homestudiocorner.com/store, if you buy any of them, you'll automatically get a mix critique from me as well for free. Those normally sell for $30, so you essentially are getting a pretty sweet deal if you buy something like Understanding EQ and you get a mix critique for free. So pretty simple, but pretty powerful promotion, especially if you take me up on it and have me critique something of yours. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but I promise you it's worth it. Definitely worth checking out. So go over to homestudiocorner.com/store and do yourself a little shopping. And with that, I think I'm done. Why don't we jump over into your questions and see what I can do to help you? Sound good? Good. Here we go. Boom. I apologize for all the coughing. Recorded an hour episode with Graham Cochran just before shooting this one. So the Simply Recording podcast is coming, and now I got to Ask Joe. It's just a podcast sort of day, and my poor little voice don't like it. But I'm here to answer your questions, as many as I can get to. I kept the rant a little bit shorter than sometimes, so I've got a little more time to knock a few of these out. First, I'll go over to Facebook. If you're not connected with me on Facebook and you like anything I have to say, please come over there right now. Go over there. Log into it, however you do it, on your phone, on your computer, and find me, Joe Gilder Music, facebook.com/Joe Gilder, Gilder Music. And come and like me over there because I'm putting out a lot of cool stuff there. I'd love to connect with you there. Which, by the way, if you're there or also on YouTube, which is Home Studio Corner on YouTube, I've been really intentionally being heavily involved there, replying to comments, answering questions, just engaging with you. I want to hear more from you. So if you've been sitting in the shadows lurking, come hang out. I want to hang out with you. All right, so here's a question over on Facebook from Brian Garrison. He says, with Mac coming out with their new OS, my question is, do you think that we can get distracted in upgrading our technology, which seems to be every year? Do I think you can get distracted? Absolutely. See, here's the thing. You don't have to upgrade anything. If this was 1994 or 97 and you had been recording to analog tape your whole life, and you heard about this thing called Pro Tools, and you're thinking, should I get into computer recording? That's an actual upgrade. You're changing the actual system. You're taking an analog system and changing it to digital. Now, I'm not going to debate the merits of both because we all know those, but it's just not something I'm interested in. But yeah, that's an upgrade. Anything else, honestly, if you have anything, Pro Tools 6 or 7, or later, if you're a Pro Tools guy, and it works and it does what you want it to do, then there's really no reason to upgrade. I've talked about this for years. One of the things is if you upgrade your operating system, there is a good chance that it will break something that you own, whether your DAW software won't work anymore, or some of your favorite plugins won't work anymore because they're not compatible with the new system. So my recommendation is to not upgrade until you absolutely have to, and even then to make sure you do your homework to know what will work and what won't. For me, I don't upgrade until I have to. I stay on older systems unless there's some big reason to upgrade. For example, when Studio One released version 3 of Studio One, it was a big upgrade, and I wanted that, so I upgraded to that. And it may have been around the same time my old computer was kind of slowing down, and I was doing a lot of this live streaming video stuff that wasn't working very well. So I got a new computer. It had the latest operating system on it, so I had to do some upgrades to get things to work. And guess what? Some of my stuff didn't work anymore. Like my Waves bundles, I needed to pay to upgrade those, and I just decided not to. And so I've been doing stock for a while, and stock plugins, and it's not hurting me as much as you might think it would. I'm enjoying myself. So yes, I think we can be distracted by upgrading our technology, because playing with your gear and setting things up is sometimes a lot more fun than getting in there and making music. Making music is hard. Making music is work. It doesn't come easily. But sitting in your studio and rearranging how you lay out your equipment, or figuring out how to hang your guitars on your wall, or tweaking your perfect mix template, all of those are seemingly productive things that aren't, that are just distractions keeping you from doing the work. So I say, if you find yourself upgrading technology and not working on music because the music makes you uncomfortable, I say grow up a little bit, be uncomfortable, do the thing, because you'll get a lot more joy out of that than you will having the latest operating system that now allows you to send really cool emojis from your desktop or something stupid like that. Here's one from Salvatore. He says, I had to upgrade my computer. My laptop took a poop, and when I was trying to record my pal's band, so this computer is great. Upgrades aren't a bad thing. They can certainly work, but I would say unless you have to, there's really no reason. I know you hear stories of guys in Nashville who are on really, really old systems that work, and they have no reason to upgrade. It's working. Why would you change it? I think we could all stand to learn that a little bit in this high, fast-paced technology environment where things are changing all the time. They just announced the iPhone 7. Does it make my iPhone obsolete? No. It still works. It still does stuff when I turn it on. So I don't need that. I'm not judging you if you get it, because that's a little bit different, but upgrading your operating system on your computer, that can break things, and I'd rather just leave it alone. Here's one from David Young. He says, I'm lucky enough to move into a new home where I will have a dedicated mixing space next to the garage. Would love to use the garage for a live space. What are your thoughts on this? I think you should use your garage for a live space. Literally, go for it. Put a mic in there and see what happens. That's literally what I would do. I wouldn't think about it anymore. Let's see. Benjamin says, have you used Studio One on a PC? No, I'm a Mac guy. I have not used a PC for anything audio related ever. So sorry, I'm not the guy to ask about PC stuff. Here's Giuliano says, what are your thoughts about giving clients different rates for different plugins, like having a higher price for me using the UAD versus stock? Giuliano, I'm going to guess you don't know me very well, and that's totally fine. First of all, I don't have anything but the stock plugins right now. And if that hurts my credibility with someone, then we're not a good fit. If they are hiring me because of the toys that I have and not because of the skill that I have and the music that I've produced and my body of work and my talent and my ability, then it's not a good hire, right? When I work with someone, if I want to work with somebody, it's not because, like a graphic designer. My buddy David DeWeese, I was just going back and forth with him on Twitter the other day. He used to live in Nashville. He lives in Florida now. Check out Dewese.com, DEWESE.com, if you need any sort of graphic design or web design work. So he designed the new Home Studio Corner website, the very, very, very simple design that I kind of asked him to do. And I didn't use him because I know he uses all the latest, greatest coding software. I don't know what he uses. I don't care what he uses. He got the job done. He may be doing it in a really ridiculously inefficient, stupid way. I don't care. He got the website up and it works. And if there's a few things I need changed, he can change them really quickly. So to me, no, I think charging a different price for using different equipment, to me, I just think that's silly. Now, there are places that will charge more to use special microphones. I just feel like if they're spending time in your studio, there is a rate for that, and that should include access to whatever you have. You can disagree with me. Blackbird Studio has they have studios, and depending on the package you get, you have access to a lot of the stuff they have, but I think you can pay more to rent even more stuff there. If you get the big room, you can try out any of the 50 snare drums they have or whatever. But if you get a smaller room, you got to pay an extra fee for that stuff. To me, that's an older way of doing it. That's a big studio way, not a home studio way. I think it's a bad idea. Tomo says, how to use a single condenser for recording cajon. I would just move it around until it sounds good. That's the simplest answer ever. But if I'm recording cajon, you can try putting it at the back of the cajon so it picks up more of the low end from the sound hole. If it's around towards the front, it's going to get more of the snare sound. But really, if you only have one microphone, then you're going to have to sacrifice something. You can't get the snap of the snares and the punch of the kick part on the sound hole in the back. It's just not going to work. So you it becomes really a simple process of moving it around until you find the right spot. If you have two microphones, probably should use them because a cajon is an interesting instrument, and typically the only good results I've seen are two mics. But you can certainly do it with one. It's just a lot of experimentation, which is totally worth, quote unquote, wasting time to do. Here's one from Stian, says, guitar amp, and you got to tell me, I've known you for years, brother, and I never say your name right. And by the way, I got your email about mixing. I will get back to you. I'm just swamped in email. I'll get back. Guitar amp recording in a bedroom. Doable with kids in the living room? Will a decent large membrane condenser pick up just the amp speaker, or will noise 2 rooms down bleed into it? 2 answers to that. First answer is try it and see. Just like most of these things, just try it and see. Secondly, if it's a big, loud guitar part, chances are, no, you're not going to pick up the people down the room. Here's the thing. There are so many. I was doing a mix the other day, and it had a doubled lead vocal. And I was doing some work on the lead vocal. I was trying to copy and paste a part from one section to another section where it didn't sound very good. And so I had it soloed so I could listen. And there was one spot in the lead vocal where he finishes a phrase and then his cell phone rings. Or like it does a little weird notification for like a text message, and it's really loud. Guess what? I never heard that in the mix. But solo the vocal and you're suddenly hearing a phone going off and you think, oh, that's so unprofessional or whatever. I didn't think that, but you would think, oh, that's going to mess up the mix, and it just didn't. I think most of the time these types of problems aren't problems. We like to think about them, we like to plan for them, and certainly you don't want to just have extra noise for the sake of extra noise, but something like this with a guitar amp, if it's at any sort of decent volume, I doubt you're going to hear anything. And even if anything else gets picked up, in the context of the mix, it might not even be audible. I did some of the ambient guitars on my album Better This Way. I was recording those in my old house. I forgot to shut the door, and there are a couple of parts in there where you can hear my wife loading clothes into the dryer, and it's kind of loud. And in a quieter section of the song, I could hear that, and I had to fix that with, I think, rolling off the high frequencies for a little bit. But in general, in the main parts of the song, you just couldn't hear that stuff. So there you go. Johnny Lipsham, my good friend from Scotland, says, mixing through tinnitus caused by 30 years of cranked cans as a session drummer. Advice. Other than the Van Gogh method of dealing with offensive ears. Man, Johnny, I don't know. I think, to me, your ears are like speakers, and speakers in reverse, I guess. You've got to learn your speakers. Like I was talking the other day, I've got these M-Audio EX66 big old monitors. I've had them for 9 years or something like that, and I hope they last another 10 because I like them and I know them. And if they died, I'd have to figure out all over a new set of speakers, which would just take time, which is fine. But for me, I like that I know these speakers. So for you, you just have to know the 2 things. One, what does a good mix sound like to your ears? So when you sit down and listen to, I know you like a lot of jazz stuff, Johnny, so listen to your favorite Coltrane record or something more modern. What does it sound like to you, right? So you're going to hear it differently than anybody else because you have a certain type of ringing in your ear, which I'm sorry you have that. I know I don't have it. I've not, but I can imagine it's really frustrating. And so that's what I would do, is spend time listening to good mixes that I know sound good and just really pay attention to what they sound like. And then I would try to make my mixes sound like that. You're probably going to have some blind spots in the upper frequencies because if you have tinnitus, then I'm guessing you've lost some high frequency range in your hearing. So a lot of guys especially when I talk to like older men who are getting into mixing and they've been in rock bands their whole life. They tend to, when they mix, everything sounds dark to them because they don't hear the high frequencies as well. So they crank up the highs. So to them, their mix sounds full, but when I listen to it, it blows me away because there's too much high frequencies. That's it's the same thing as listening on speakers that are really dull sounding, speakers that don't have a high frequency response. You've got to learn how to mix on those in a way that translates. So you've got an extra challenge. You've got speakers and headphones you've got to learn to mix on. You've also got to learn to mix with your ears and the issues that they're giving you. It's totally doable. It's just kind of one extra step. And we all have that to a degree. All of us hear a little bit differently, I would imagine. But for you, it's just being aware of that and probably checking things a lot more on different systems, and probably having maybe a buddy that you give, you send your final mix to say, hey, just real quick, is the high end in this working okay? And he writes back, nope, still too bright. And you go adjust that because he can hear the high frequencies better than you can. I mean, that might be a part of the process for you, and it's totally worth it. It's extra work, but I think it's worth looking into. Bill, I don't know how to use Impact in Studio One, that plugin. I've never used it, so I'm sorry. I'm sure there's a YouTube video on it somewhere out there. XAD21X says, is there a method if I want to automate the cutoff with the amplitude of a kick drum, like an external sidechain or something like that? I'm not understanding the question. You can cut off like the frequency knob, like the high cut frequency or the low pass filter on an EQ. You can automate that. As far as the amp, I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm sorry. How can I write complex but smooth chord progressions? And you mentioned a couple of people that I don't know. I would say copy what they're doing. Learn every song they've written, and you'll start to soak in a lot of that stuff. You'll start to and learn like the actual chords. So then you'll know, okay, so I did a song the other day. If you've been on my YouTube channel, I started doing these cover songs on there called Music Therapy. And one is a song by Jim Croce called I Got a Name. And when I'm playing it, it's in, what is it? It's in E. So it's an E major, but he plays all sorts of other chords in that key. So he plays, there's an F sharp major in there. There's a G sharp major in there. And then there's even a C sharp major. So those are three notes that are in the scale of E major, but they're all supposed to be minor chords or diminished chords, and they're all major chords. So they're borrowed chords from different keys, and they add such a complexity to the song, and they support a really cool melody in a way that's just really interesting. And I honestly had never played the song before. I've known it forever, and I just sat down with a guitar and started picking it out, and just by ear, I figured out where those chords were. And I found it really interesting that he did so much of that. So that was something I learned. I played it. I learned it. I internalized it by memorizing it well enough to where I could play it for a video. And then now it's in my brain and I can't get it out. Our brains are interesting things. You can train your brain to do lots of things and to remember lots of things, both good and bad. So if you're looking for ways to make better chord progressions, you need to learn better chord progressions. If you aren't good at chord progressions, you need to learn a bunch from your favorite artist and really learn them, and then kind of start to incorporate some of what they do into your songs. Also, learning music theory, as boring as that may sound, to me really opened my mind up to A, explain why I was using some of the chords I was using in my progressions, but B, also just kind of give it a bigger context of how these notes relate and really help me in a lot of ways. So maybe find a local college that lets you take a theory class. Might be really interesting for you. Here's one back from Stian. Says, I'm following up. This was he was the guy who acted. It's Stian. First half of Steve, first part of undo. Stian. Okay, Stian. I don't know why I want to say Stian. Okay, so Stian was asking about recording with his amp in the bedroom with kids in the next room. And here's his follow-up. He says, I'm thinking of just putting my amp on our bed and get the mic in the right place. I was thinking just hanging it by a cable down in front of the speaker. That's interesting. You could do that. I don't see any reason not to. Honestly, decoupling the amp from the floor is helpful. So a lot of people will put amps on a riser or like a foam thing that keeps it from resonating with the floor. That helps it have a tighter low end. As far as laying it on the bed, I'd probably just sit it up normally and just set a mic up with a mic stand. You can adjust it a little more that way. Facing the ceiling might be cool. I don't know. I would tend to go with the way the amp was designed. I don't know if tubes rattling in there with it being on its side would eventually cause problems. I don't know. I really don't. But it's worth trying. Tim says Snoopy is very quiet today. I just haven't said anything funny enough. Right? Remember how I pronounced Steon's name? It's pretty funny. It's actually Steon, not Steon. I know. There are funny names in the world. They probably think Joe is funny. Let's see if there are any questions over on the Facebook. I don't see any. How about the Twitter? Nope. How about the live chat? I'm going to call it a quits early. Oh, so apparently Stian wasn't saying anything about lying it down. You said you were going to get the mic and place it, just hanging it down by the... Oh, you were talking about hanging the mic down by a cable in front of the speaker like they do at venues a lot. That could work, just if it sounds good. For me, I usually place the mic facing the speaker, maybe at an angle, but when it's hanging down, it's not facing the speaker at all. You're just getting the side pickup of it. I don't know if that's a great idea. Oh, it's a great idea if it sounds good. So, yeah, I would try that. Ginavaldo just arrived. I'm doing a live podcast Q&A, and you're at the very tail end of it. Here's a question from Giuliano. Do you think it's worth buying your own separate microphone for live, maybe like a live condenser mic, or is it not ideal because I might get used to specific equipment? I mean, if you're playing out a lot, maybe, but the thing is as we know in the studio, if you do a lot, one microphone might be great, and we just recorded an episode of Simply Recording Podcast talking about this. That microphone that you love might sound great in one venue and might sound awful in another one. So I tend to just trust the place that I'm playing to have, equipment that'll work. On the flip side, if you're playing a really dive bar, it's not going to matter if you bring your nice condenser mic. They might not even have fan and power to power it, so you couldn't use it anyway, or you use it and it's just they're kind of set up to sound a certain way and you're just messing it up. So I don't know. I probably wouldn't, but I'm sure there are people that do have their favorite mic that they bring everywhere. And that's legit. There's nothing wrong with that. Is that funny? Yeah, Snoopy thinks that was funny. Here's one from Salvatore, and then I think we might be done. He says, I've been creating a song for the past month, and I want to put an effect on a small section for the intro. I don't know how to use automation. How do you use automation on a small piece of a song? Well, there's a couple ways to do it. One is to not use automation. Take that first part of the song and just copy it to a new track and put your crazy effects on that track. And so you take... if it's a 4-minute song and you want that crazy effect on the first 30 seconds, and it's on that guitar, so you got a 4-minute guitar part, you cut it, you chop up the audio so the first 30 seconds is separated, and then pull it down to a new audio track. And now you can put the crazy effect on that audio track, and then when the 30 seconds is up, now you're just listening to the original track. That's the way I do it most of the time, but you should... You should really just learn automation too at some point. I've got some videos. If you just, whatever DAW you're using, just go to YouTube and search how to use automation and then type in your DAW, and I think you'd be great. All right, that's it for now. My voice is shot, and I think we covered some good questions. Some of you are saying songwriting videos. You're wanting me to do more songwriting videos. I've actually done a few. Just not here on YouTube. They're actually in my VIP members area. So if you like my YouTube channel, you'll love VIP. Check it out at homestudiocorner.com/VIP. There's a whole catalog of like in-depth videos in there that I've done, in addition to mixed critiques in a forum. But yeah, I'm sure, especially since I'm doing more and more music stuff here on YouTube, I'll probably do some songwriting at some point. But there's actually a set of videos in there where I wrote a song start to finish. I did it live, actually, streaming. And, I don't know if I've ever actually recorded that song. I should go back and find it, because it ended up being kind of cool. But, yeah, I might do more of that. I thought about doing a songwriting course, but I don't know. Even though I've written, many dozens of songs, I don't know how qualified I am to do that. But anyway, I don't even have my outro music set up to go. I'm just going to call it quits and go back and edit the outro music back in, because that's how you can do it in a digital world. Thank you so much for listening and being a part of this. I'm really glad you're here. I hope it was helpful. And if you haven't yet subscribed to me in YouTube and Facebook, please do. I'd love to stay in touch with you and find out more ways that I can help you out. All right, that's it for me. Go make some better music. See ya.